The main issue is that LGBT people in South Africa, especially Black LGBT people, do not live with safety and security in their own state, despite the fact that the Constitution protects them. So for me, I identified security as being vernacular, on the ground security. And so in order to do that, I really had to do ethnographic work. I had to be with the people, attend their events, and in many ways, because I was part of the community, or I was participating in the community. So it wasn't just ethnographic work, but it was actually being in the clubs, going to the organizations, being a part of the community really on a day-to-day basis. So ethnographic work, some media discourse work, like looking at newspapers, looking at TV shows, basically thinking about the ways that LGBT people were being represented in the South African media, and a bit of archival work. I did want to understand a little bit the history of these representations, of these identities, so I did a bit of archival work. And maybe lastly, just a bit of work on understanding the legal system. South Africa has a hybrid legal system, and just trying to understand that better was a part of the work as well. Okay, what did I learn? The main thing that I learned was that security for any group of people, but especially for those that are most vulnerable, begins with the community. So if we're looking at police officers, if we're looking at army individuals or private security guards, remember that those people come from the very communities that they're policing. They come from the very communities that they're patrolling. So in many ways, you can't just have a sensitivity training if that's not going to really change the hearts and minds of people. So part of what I really focused on were the interventions that were being made by Black LGBT people themselves to change people's minds. So a lot of that was artistic, it was representational work. First and foremost, it's that legal code and protections and state recognition are necessary, but they're not sufficient conditions for guaranteeing safety and security. So we have to, I think the way that we spoke about it in the research was talking about changing minds, changing social norms. So the group of people that I study, they violate or they challenge, let's just say, many of the social norms of the society, even though they may not challenge the legal norms of the society. So the question is, how do we go about making some of those changes in the social norms? And I think, for me, I think a lot of times when we look at security sector reform in Africa, we haven't done that work of thinking about not just changing institutional structures, but actually changing the norms under which those institutional structures function. I think the main thing is how we can maybe begin to think about where there have been some very small successes and how to keep supporting those successes. So when I think, for example, about continent-wide, these questions, there are a lot of things that are happening on the ground. So I'd like to see more support for these smaller organizations that are on the ground that are trying to change people's minds. And the more that we can support the work that's being done on the ground, I think the more that we can change things.